If you are curious about the luxury market and what it takes to create a business catering to high-end exclusive clients, you're in the right place. I'm Kendra Losee, and you've tuned in to the Invisible to Invincible podcast, where we dive in to the mindset shifts and business strategies that transform business owners like you from hidden gems to industry leaders. Today, we're sitting down with Elizabeth Solaru, the CEO of Luxury Business Emporium, to discover how she launched her business and took her brand from new and struggling to seriously successful by creating an entirely new way to approach and work in the luxury sector. Elizabeth shares her signature strategies for crafting an irresistible luxury brand and the secret to attracting these discerning clients. Her insights are as valuable as her luxury clientele, so be sure to subscribe and keep listening. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's dive in. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And so, what I would like to do is to dive in. If you can tell people what you're doing today, we'll talk about your journey and how you got there and all of the fun things.
Great. So currently I work as a luxury business coach as well as a keynote speaker. I help businesses who want to level up. I help them level up, or if they want to get into the luxury market specifically, I help them do that. So it's about client attraction strategies, but it's completely different when you're talking about luxury clients.
Absolutely. And that's really what I want to focus on today because the client attraction strategies, there's so many things there's so many different approaches that work for different people. And we've talked a lot for people that have been listening along and joining in this journey. We've talked a lot about different service offerings and different types of services, but we haven't touched on luxury. And I think that that's like its own thing. And there's this perception that people aren't willing to pay for anything unless it's like a Beyonce concert or Taylor Swift or, there's certain things people will pay for. But I think that's just a story we tell ourselves that there is a market for luxury. And so I'm really excited to hear about this today.
Yeah, I think the luxury market is certainly different. It's about emotion, like a great many things are. And what people don't understand is that these luxury brands, so the big name brands, they spend millions and millions and millions building up this desirability.
Mm-hmm.
And they also spend millions building emotional resonance with mere mortals like myself. So I fell into luxury completely by accident. It wasn't as if I said, I'm going to be a luxury business. I fell into it by accident because my products were really, really resonating with a particular type of luxury client. And this is where my kind of client attraction strategy, this is where it's different
Mm-hmm.
because I look at it from the client point of view. In my 20 years in luxury business, I would say there are at least 8 different types of luxury clients, and they leave clues when they talk to you. The problem is, some of us try to sell the same product the same way, which is a massive mistake. I say to people, if you'd go by just demographics or by people that look like each other or the way traditional marketing has
Mm-hmm.
taught us to, I use this example. Imagine King Charles, our current king, and Ozzy Osbourne,
Yep.
both white males, and they were both born on the same day, same year. They're both luxury clients.
Mm-hmm.
According to your ideal client profile, you would probably sell to them the same way because they're both white male, they're both of a certain class, they're both British, and stats will tell us, or even data may tell us that they enjoy the same things. However, according to how I've divided the archetypes, they're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
The luxury brands they would buy would be different. The things they enjoy will be different, but they will obviously they have some similarities, but they're completely different. So that's the way to look at segmentation when it comes to luxury clients. What I've tried to do is break things down so it's understandable, because in the luxury sector, we have a lot of luxury experts. They tend to be professors of luxury, they tend to be academics. They're very learned and intelligent and they know what they're doing. However, I'm coming at it from a business owner perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
I haven't got time to read 1,000 books, and I haven't got the time, I haven't got the brain power to use big language or big words when it comes to my clients. I just want to put money in the till, as you know, at the very minute, at the basic level. So so that's why I've come up with a way to segment luxury clients and then sell to them based on the type of person that they are.
That is so smart, and I was laughing when you brought up that example because I saw it when I used to teach social media marketing at a couple different universities, and, we have to go into the demographics, and we have to go into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But at the last class I taught, I found that example, and I 100% have it on slide somewhere that I use because it's so true. They're the same class, they're the same income rate, right? There's a certain point where it just becomes ridiculous, but you do have to address each type of person separately based on specific characteristics. And one thing that you said there, I think, is you said several really important things, but one thing that really stands out is to reach those people emotionally, you have to go in and address them individually.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, for example, with King Charles, his absolute need security. For him, it's security, privacy, security concerns. They're the two big things with him. With somebody like Ozzy Osbourne, he, I would say, is an innovator.
Mm-hmm.
He, again, when there was this rumor about him and a bat on stage, I'm not going to go into details about what he did to the bat, but when there was he reveled in that. He
Mm-hmm.
loved.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing about this archetypes that I've come up with, using a lot of research and using work done by other people, is that sometimes some people can be one particular archetype in their private life, so with their family. But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to work, they can be another archetype. We need to be aware of that as well. And because we're human, nothing is absolute. So you can have a mix of characteristics. When it comes to luxury, I look at the because one of the fundamentals of luxury business is storytelling. That is what brings the emotion. That's what draws in the emotion. For example, if we look at Coco Chanel and her classic perfume, number five, some people say it's because five's her lucky number. Some people say it's because it was a fifth bottle of scent that she smelled when she commissioned a nose to create a scent for her. Now, regardless of the truth of the story, the bottom line is we have an amazing story. Every time you see number five, Chanel created it, those stories evoke emotion because we put ourselves in Chanel's shoes when she was creating that scent. I've also come up with archetypes for different types of business, luxury business owners. So, for example, I type to myself, I'm an artisan. And because I'm an artisan, I just want to create beautiful cakes. I don't care about cost price or cost of materials. This is the best. If there's a new way of doing things, I want to try it. So I will therefore need somebody in the business that would be the business brain, that would be look after my finances to make sure I'm not overspending, and somebody to also market what I do to the luxury sector. So the different types of luxury brand owners, I also take them through a journey. When you know yourself, you are able then to serve your luxury clients better. Because, for example, if you are a salesman as your archetype, that's good, but it's also bad because that means you will oversell.
Right.
You will oversell, you have no idea of numbers, and you will also overpromise. We
Mm-hmm.
see that a lot. When you've got someone who's a good salesman, they oversell, overpromise, and don't deliver. And you can't afford that in the luxury sector. Those are some of the things that I talk about and I've also written about.
I'm really excited to see the different archetypes and archetype myself, to be perfectly clear. That's the brilliance of this also, is that everyone wants to know who they are. It's not the quiz, but what can you tell me about myself to help me know myself better? I'm really curious. We were talking a little bit before we went live, and I have very little, my background's all services for the most part. And my I was saying earlier that the only time I've really worked in luxury, like I've worked in higher education, I've worked in all these different areas, but the only time I've really worked with a luxury client was when Tiffany's was a client, which is, we can all agree very luxury, but I was very young in my career and I don't remember, and I just moved on from there. So, how did you find yourself in a luxury market?
Okay, so I'm going to go back slightly. I actually was a scientist. I did my degrees, did my master's in medical microbiology and parasitology, a mouthful, I know.
Can you say that a couple times faster?
A tongue twister. And I trained at St. Mary's Hospital in London, which is world famous
Yes.
hospital. Penicillin was discovered, the window. So for me, there was really romantic connotations. And I was actually on track to becoming a professor because I really wanted, I love academia. After several years as a scientist, I thought there's got to be more to life than a lab. There's got
Mm,
to be more to life than a lab coat. So I then went off, did an MBA, and became a headhunter in the city. I kind of networked myself into that role,
right.
became a headhunter in the city, and then I was recruiting chief execs and I was recruiting finance directors, etc. And the one thing I found was that a lot of the skills that I brought from the lab, standard operating procedures, doing things correctly. I did a deep dive and I found that the most interesting things about recruiting was the psychology of the candidate and the psychology of the businesses. So I was literally a matchmaker. All I was doing was bringing people together. That was all. When you get, again, I love stripping things down to the bare basics. And it was about finding the right candidate for the right company. But what tends to happen is some companies would say they'd have a massive list of their requirements. And I would say to myself, but you want me to get a chief exec in another company to join your company, but your company is not that attractive. And vice versa. Some candidates will oversell themselves on their CV, sound
Uh,
amazing, but you then meet them and you think, you've sold me a bill of goods here, but never mind. So I found that the psychology was very interesting for me. And again, it was very stressful, 18-hour days. And
oof.
to relieve stress, I was baking. I'd always baked since I was little, but I started baking. And a lot of people were like, oh my God, your cakes are so delicious. They're so great. So when I lost my job, 2008, the crash happened. I lost my job and I decided it was a milestone birthday. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. I
Mhm.
decided to set up a big company in the middle of a crash. And as you know, whenever there's a bit of a rocky time with the economy, things like that are the first to go
Right.
because people have no time for extra luxuries like that. While I was a headhunter, we were told to make 100 calls a week, cold calls, and try and get into the diaries of chief executives. And that was what I took the same formula and I applied it to get meetings with wedding planners or event planners. I kept ringing and ringing. I took the yellow pages and rang and rang and rang. And then I made a phone call that really changed the trajectory of my business. A young girl at the end of the phone said, oh, do you make cupcakes? And I'm like, of course we make cupcakes. And I'm going to be in your area in the next 3 days and I can bring you samples. And I did just that. I took the samples there and apparently I took it to Lady Elizabeth Anson. And that was how I got into the luxury space. Now, who is Lady Elizabeth Anson, you might ask? She happened to be the late Queen Elizabeth. She was her cousin and she was the best party planner in the UK. So that one phone call changed my life. I dropped the cakes off and I legged it out of there. By the time I got home, I got a phone call saying, come back, she wants to meet you. And that's how I got my first high end commission.
Wow. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's so impressive.
But I mean, that was a great story, but the story didn't end there. What she then did after I fulfilled the order and the commission, she then wrote me this gorgeous handwritten note, and she said, "You can use the contents as your for your marketing material. You can use this testimonial as your marketing material." That really opened a lot of doors.
Mm-hmm.
What she did is actually typical of a certain type of luxury client. They're the type of luxury client where it's very difficult to get in, but once you are in and they like you, by word of mouth, they can change the trajectory of your life. And that's exactly what happened to me.
That is impressive. First of all, your perseverance for just picking up the phone and cold calling through the phone book. There's so many layers there of that story that's unique and very impressive, because a lot of people wouldn't have started there. A lot of people would have started online, right? Oh, I can go to Facebook groups, I can go to here, I can go to there, not fully realizing that the impact of the phone call and getting somebody is
Yeah, yeah.
very differentiating at this point in time. So it's fascinating that she sent you that information to use. Did you know that that was a thing they did in that area?
No, at that point I didn't know, but there were two things I did right to land in the luxury sector. And you rightly pointed out the phone calls. If you are brave and bold enough to call somebody on the phone, because there's something about, again, it's about emotional resonance. You want to quickly build that emotional rapport. Now, if somebody calls me and I detect they're nervous, I would want to put them at ease. If you're a nice person, you try to, oh no, don't be nervous. What is
Yeah.
it? And you're more inclined to listen. But an email you can delete. You can just, not for me. Another cold caller, you can delete. But a person on the phone, you're hesitant to delete. That was the first thing. And then the second thing was being very responsive, because if she said, "Oh, do you make cupcakes?" I'm like, "Yeah, I make cupcakes. Visit my website, or I can email you something." I was desperate enough to say, "You know what? I'm just going to drop samples."
Yeah.
The 3 days for me to get money together was to get the boxes together and to do the best sample. So and the fact that I would physically go and drop it, that was another thing, because luxury is very personal. And the one thing headhunting taught me was anticipatory needs. So even needs that people don't even know they have or want, you need to anticipate that. So it's not just about me dropping off the cakes or whatever. It's about me saying, okay, the question I should have asked if I were to do it again, I needed to have asked about allergies. Do you have any allergies? Do you have any preferred flavors? Do you have any intolerances? So I should have asked questions like that, even if you're dropping samples, because the thing about luxury is you either give it for free or you charge full price
Mm-hmm.
and charge well. So looking back now, I did a number of things, but I could have done a number of other things as well.
That's really interesting, and anticipating the needs. I think it was Steve Jobs that talked about that as far as when he made the iPod originally, right? Like
Yeah.
people want music. They want, if you ask people what they want, they'll tell you it's, well, I wish this could be over here instead of here. Not even thinking about what that bigger thing could be. And so being able to anticipate what people want, it is very also like Ritz-Carlton kind of thing, like the luxury hotels, anticipating things before they even realize it. It's amazing that you have been able to learn from that, like pivot, first of all, so many times. The mindset and the boldness to create a business in the middle of a crash is amazing. What advice would you give yourself then, knowing now what you know?
I think I would have told myself to definitely go for it, but to do certain things to mitigate against the periods, the very dark, very stark periods where nothing was coming in. Knowing what I know now, I think I would have built my personal brand a lot better, because sometimes we're so focused on the business, getting the business in, we forget to focus on building our personal brand. So I would have built that a lot more. I would have put myself out there a lot more in terms of the personal brand. And also I would have I'd have been even bolder, and maybe called more hotels and venues and even visited, because there's something about, and I'm not saying people should go out and start doorstepping, but there's something around, there's something about doing things that other people are not doing to make you stand out. And I think sometimes because we fear ridicule and rejection and shame and being shamed, we don't step out and do the things that we should be doing. So even with my latest book, The Luxpreneur, I had the idea for the book 5 years ago, but I kept saying there are so many luxury experts out there. There's so many professors that they've studied brands for years and years. What more can I add to the conversation? But then the more people kept asking me to be a keynote speaker, the more I realized maybe there is a space for me, maybe there is room for me. So I think even being bolder, I would advise myself. Another bit of advice would be not to waste money placing adverts. I would have invested instead online. I would have invested on Google ads or things to boost my website and SEO rather than adverts, because some of these adverts are vanity metrics and not really adding to the bottom line of your business.
All of that is good advice. So I hope you are listening and taking notes, friend, because there's so many good things that she said there. Elizabeth, I want to dial in a little bit more because we talked about you mentioned personal brand, and that's very near and dear to what I've said as well. The best way for company owners to stand out is to show up,
Yeah,
because people need to know and trust you, especially in your market, in the
absolutely.
luxury market. And so one of the things that I was listening to a podcast episode the other day, and they were talking about how the message relies on the messenger
Yeah,
and how important that is. If you think about what you say and the things that you say, not you specifically, but somebody that we all go in thinking, assuming that we're smart and we know and we're credible, but other people don't know that. Other people might know you as a scientist or a headhunter. They don't know that you have this amazing ability to create beautiful cakes and also coach in this area. It's up to us to help them learn this, because they're going to take that message from somebody they already know and trust and have that credibility with themselves faster and easier than from somebody they don't know. So when we start to build our personal brand, it's really important that we understand and we are building that credibility. You got that credibility right away when you got that first letter.
exactly. It was fast tracked. So that's
Yeah,
why I tell the story. And I'm so grateful for that, because that really, I leapfrogged over some of the process that I could have gone through to get that credibility.
absolutely. And the other thing, I mean, you clearly earned it, right? Like it wasn't just handed to you. You clearly earned it, but it was a nice jump, as you said, to fast track you. The other thing you said that I want to dive into more as well is talking about you didn't know if there was room for you, right? You hear academics talking, and as somebody who's read so many marketing books, they all hold up the same companies as examples. When you are somebody who can come in and bring your own unique perspective, suddenly you're not competing with all those other people, because you're bringing what you see as different and you're not bringing those same brands. Here it's Nike and Apple and Harley and Chanel and the level up of those brands. When you can bring something unique and that perspective and something, it is something different, and it is something that people are going to stop and listen to, partly because they're tired of everyone doing it the same way and talking about the same companies in the same exact way.
Thank you for that. I think also what I've done in the book as well, that's a bit different, because I can't use my real clients as examples.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used certain celebrities as examples and try to mix them up. I've used celebrities that are Gen Z, boomers, celebrities, for example, that maybe are people may have never heard of, or some they've heard of, some they've never heard of. And I did a bit of testing with
Mm-hmm.
different age groups. I beta tested the book with
Mm-hmm.
different age groups. And I was really surprised at the really pleasant reaction, because they said I made luxury come alive to them and they had a bit more understanding. And I gave real life examples. So I didn't just use the usual suspects, as you rightly said. I gave real life examples, some topical, some a bit controversial. And I used some of the celebrities that people can readily, of them. Even within the same family, I the different behaviors. There's a particular very famous American family of women. One individual belongs to a certain group, and another individual belongs to a certain group because, again, looking at behavior, looking at buying habits, looking at who they've represented. So yeah, so I really, really, really did a lot of thinking because I thought to myself, this is the book I would have loved to have been able to read when I started my journey 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, what would I have wanted to know about myself?
Right.
What would I have wanted to know about the market? And what would I have wanted to know about the clients? So they're the three key things: the you as an individual, the wider market, as well as the clients.
Yeah, sorry, I was rolling my eyes so hard to avoid the Kardashians and when they were just famous for being famous, and then they started opening all these businesses, and then I was like, "Oh, I have to pay attention to them now." So that's why, like, I would actively, and it's hard. It is hard to avoid them here, especially being in Southern California. So especially being here, like, oh. So yeah, I can't ignore, I can't dismiss their brilliance and their marketing, but they're a
Yeah.
lot.
And whether we like it or not, a lot of luxury brands have collaborated with them.
Hmm.
Whether
Oh, they're
and
brilliant.
and it's been brilliant. I mean, I think Kris Jenner has got to be one of the smartest business women of our time. This is what I say about luxury business. Your product doesn't have to be the best. It's just got to be good.
Hmm.
If you have a good enough product, you can sell to luxury.
I was just reading about George Clooney's tequila. Not great.
Not great, but it's good enough. It's a good product, and the positioning, the marketing, etc. I was speaking the other day about Beyonce's new whiskey.
I know. That launch was amazing.
Beyonce's new whiskey, for me, it's a luxury product, and I love the collaboration with Moet. But they didn't push the envelope. It's a good product, but I didn't see anything innovative about it. Even the flavor profile, oh, it's reminiscent of Scottish and Japanese whiskeys. And I'm like, but she's a Texan girl. She's a
Hmm.
Texas farmer girl. Wouldn't it have been amazing for her to have this all American kind of like thing around? She's also the queen of the Bay Hive. I would have added a bit of honey into the whiskey.
Yeah.
Again, this is the kind of out of the box thinking that would have been amazing for such a luxury brand like that. But it just goes to show that sometimes some luxury products.
She didn't have to work that hard to sell that whiskey. She's just, here's my whiskey. One of the things that I want to ask you is that right now, when you talk about luxury, at least in the economy today here in the US, luxury brands often feel far away. Like people have very specific ideas of where they're selling their money, and everyone's complaining about inflation and things going up. Is it easier to sell? I have a couple questions for you. Is it easier to sell luxury items than it is lower price point items to more people?
That's a great question. That's amazing. And it's amazing for several reasons. The thing about luxury items is when we think of a luxury brand, I'm not going to name names, but
Right.
generally, I simplified it because I just broke it down, simplified it, and I said they sell at three levels. They sell, so you have your lipsticks, your perfumes, etc. They tend to be slightly more inflation proof because if I save up for maybe a month, or if I save up a month's salary, a week's salary, I will be able to buy a bottle of perfume from this brand. If you then go to the next level, which could be off the peg outfit or shoes or a handbag, depending on the type of handbag, of course, if I save up for about a year, I might be able to afford a handbag. And then when you think of the third level, which is couture, which is
Mhm.
six figures, I might need to sell a kidney to be able to afford couture. What luxury brands have done is that the lipsticks and the perfumes, that money is actually what powers and feeds the rest of the brand. to be honest with you. So is it easier to sell volume? Possibly would be my answer. I would say yes, because it's got mass appeal, and also the price point is not so high
Right.
compared to if you have to buy a handbag, or if you have to get, proper couture. A brand that is doing amazing things, very high price point, but they're selling, and they are almost recession proof, is Hermes.
Mm.
Because right now most luxury brands, they're not selling as much, because where the luxury sector is very much dependent on the Chinese market,
Mhm.
and the Chinese are not buying as much luxury. In fact, they have something called luxury shame, so they're not buying as much luxury. However, this brand Hermes created the rarity, exclusivity that many people think about when they think about luxury brands. They made certain handbags. You can't just walk in and buy them. You got to join a list. If you were lucky, you might get to the top of the list. Some people say, there's a couple of ladies suing Hermes saying they were made to buy other items and
Mhm.
were not being offered an Hermes bag. So by creating that exclusivity around the handbag, they've managed to really drive up the value, the emotional connection, and the desire for the handbag. Because many young girls that I know will always mention a Birkin or a Kelly, a Birkin or a Kelly. When I think back to the origins of a Birkin, it was created for Jane Birkin, the actress. She stuffs her handbag with books. She wanted a big handbag to carry around her books. And yet people have it now as a status symbol. So to answer your question, yes, it's easier to sell volume. However, luxury brands that do it really well are able to sell at a very high price point, but much lower volume.
Thank you for that. That's really interesting. What advice, I want to be conscious of time as well, but what advice do you have for somebody who might be thinking, you know what, the luxury market might be where I need to be?
Excellent question. And I address that in my book, The Luxpreneur. You need 5 pillars to build your business on. One of the key pillars, which I find separates luxury businesses from ordinary businesses, is storytelling. So earlier I spoke about Chanel, I spoke about the bottle. It was a fifth bottle, and that made it into folklore. There are other stories about her as well. She was taken to an orphanage. She was taught to sew by nuns. Then she networked, made friends, started designing, and invented the little black jacket. If somebody's thinking of going into the luxury market, you need to sit down and think, okay, what stories about my life can I make into folklore? I spoke about Lady Elizabeth giving me a helping hand in a most unexpected way. That is a story I can tell over and over again. It will probably outlast me the day I leave the earth. You need to sit down and think, okay, what is my storytelling around myself, around my services, around my products? What can make it into folklore? We spoke about Beyonce's whiskey, and she referenced her uncle who was a moonshiner. But there's another whiskey called Uncle Ernest.
Yeah,
That I mean, if people want to know about storytelling, that is the finest storytelling, because Uncle Nest
Nestor,
taught
uncle. Yeah.
Nestor, I think.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I've read about it.
it's amazing, exactly. So you need that kind of, because if you think about it, every luxury brand you can identify by name has a compelling story. So you need to think of, okay, what would be my compelling story? Sometimes when we set up businesses, we try to make ourselves sound bigger than what we are. We are a company. We do this and we do that. No, that is not compelling. That is not emotional. That will not resonate, because you sound very corporate. When we think of Apple, we think of Steve Jobs, we think of his quotes, we think of his story. Was he a nice person? No, no one cares about that. Was Kokoshi a nice person? Not particularly, but people resonate with the storytelling. So I would say storytelling. And the second thing people need to think about if they want to come into the luxury space is pricing. I find that many businesses price too low for the luxury market. and too high for the ordinary market. So you can't have your feet in both camps. You need to say, okay, luxury market or bust, and then price accordingly. Along with that price comes certain responsibilities, knowledge, and learning about your target market. And you need to go after your target market with everything in you, like I did when I picked up the phone to call as many people as possible.
There's so much great advice in this. You mentioned your book, The Luxpreneur. It's coming out by the time this airs, it'll already be out. So you should definitely pick that up if you are interested at all in the luxury market. But I think that it's even more than that. It sounds like it's really good for all entrepreneurs to understand their clients a little bit more and being able to, there's so like the idea of storytelling in your business is so overused right now that sometimes I don't even like to talk about it, even though it's so necessary to create those connections. What you said is really key is not just the stories that you have, but what are big enough, what stories rise to the top that could become part of your folklore, that become part of the rest of your business and you as your personal brand, and that help people understand your values, what you stand for, the reason why you've made these decisions for your business and what you offer. So I just want to thank you for being here because your advice and your wisdom in this has just been tremendous.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate the platform and the opportunity to talk about something I'm very, very passionate about. The luxury sector, it's hard. I'm not going to lie, it's hard, but it's definitely rewarding and worth it if you know how to navigate it. I think my book will definitely provide your own personal GPS into the luxury sector.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So if you are at all intrigued by the idea of the luxury market, want to learn more about it, want to learn more about advice for growing your business, definitely check out Elizabeth's book. I'll put links to all of it below, as well as how to follow and learn more about Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you for being here. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed our conversation at the time, and thank you. Do you have any last words of advice you want to give to anybody?
Oh gosh, I would just say, oh gosh, it might sound a bit trite or whatever, but I would say in the luxury sector, your USP would make you stand out. You need something about yourself. It could be something you are not proud of, because it sounds weird, but people sometimes want to hide a certain part of them, thinking, oh my God, that's not posh enough. It's similar to what I said about, oh my God, I want to write this book, but do I have anything to say? You need to think about something about yourself, because every luxury brand has got the DNA of the owner imprinted into it. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to put a little bit of yourself into your brand. You can't be hands off. You've got to put a bit of yourself into your brand. So there are things about yourself you might not like, and it might be the very thing that resonates with your luxury clients. So yeah, I think that would be the last thing I would say.
I just wanted to find, if you're listening and are like, what's a USP? It's a unique selling proposition, and it's what's going to help make you different. And it's that thing, exactly what Elizabeth was just talking about. That's so important. Your business, whether you like it or not, is going to be a reflection of you as the owner. And so you may as well look at putting that DNA of you into it intentionally versus accidentally.
Fantastic.
Anyway, on that note, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully you listening have as well. That's all the time we have for today, friends. Elizabeth shared so many brilliant insights with us. I'd love to hear your favorite in the comments. So be sure to subscribe to the Invisible to Invincible podcast and let us know your favorite in the comments below. I'm your host, Kendra Losee. I'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, do something that makes you feel brave, confident, and fun. And more importantly, like the thriving business owner that you've always known you can be.